At my husband's funeral, I heard my daughter-in-law say, "Speed up the inheritance." I'm putting the old lady in a nursing home. She had no idea my husband had added a clause about her in the will before he passed. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never imagined that at 68 years old, I would find myself shrinking into the shadows to avoid my own family. My heart still aches when I think about it. The day I buried Thomas, my husband of 43 years, was when I discovered the painful truth about how little I was valued by those who should have treasured me most. The memorial service had been dignified and beautiful, if such a word can appropriately describe something so heartbreaking. The university auditorium was filled with colleagues, former students, friends and family members. Thomas had been deeply respected in our community, a brilliant and compassionate man who dedicated his career as a university professor. His influence had touched countless lives, including my own. I maintained my composure throughout the ceremony, accepting condolences with the quiet dignity that had defined my years as an elementary school principal. My fingers clutched tightly by our son, Michael. He had been attentive throughout the day, ensuring I ate something, gently guiding me through the crowds of well-wishers. His wife, Victoria, had been there too. Of course, impeccably dressed in designer black, her expression perfectly calibrated to convey appropriate solemnity. After 2 exhausting hours of handshakes and embraces, the weight of grief crushed down on me until I could barely breathe. My chest felt tight, my throat constricted with unshed tears. I desperately needed a moment alone. The memorial center had a small private room, a space for families to gather away from the crowds. It was empty now, everyone having moved to the reception area. I slipped away without telling anyone, desperate for just 5 minutes of solitude. I sank into a plush armchair in the corner, closed my eyes and finally allowed the tears to flow freely down my cheeks. Thomas was gone. My partner, my confidant, my intellectual equal. 43 years together, and now I faced the world alone. I'm not sure how long I sat there before I heard the door open. I quickly wiped my tears away, not wanting anyone to see me in such a vulnerable state. But the newcomers didn't notice me in my corner, partially hidden by a large floral arrangement. "I told you we should have brought this up before he died." Victoria's voice, stripped of the sympathetic tone she'd maintained all day, cut through the quiet room. "It wasn't the right time," Michael replied, his voice heavy with fatigue. He was suffering enough. I froze, not intending to eavesdrop, but suddenly unable to announce my presence. My heart pounded painfully against my ribs. "Well, now we have to deal with her," Victoria continued, her voice sharp with irritation. "You need to talk to the lawyer first thing Monday. We need to know exactly what we're getting. And how. Quickly. Victoria, please. My father isn't even in the ground yet, and your mother isn't getting any younger. The longer we wait, the more complicated things will get." There was a rustle of fabric, Victoria adjusting her expensive dress, perhaps. "Accelerare l'eredità. Manderò la vecchia in una casa di riposo." My Italian was rusty, a language I'd learned decades ago when Thomas and I had spent 2 years teaching in Italy, but I understood enough. "Hurry up with the inheritance. I'm sending the old woman to a nursing home." "The old woman? Me?" Michael sighed heavily. "She's not going to want to leave the house." "Of course not. But she can't manage alone, and you know it. The place is too big. There are stairs, and she's already getting forgetful." "It's the sensible solution. Maybe she could live with us," Michael suggested, his voice uncertain. Victoria's laugh was cold, sending chills down my spine. "In our house with my schedule? Besides, you know how she is, always in everyone's business. I can't have her there judging everything I do. She's my mother, Victoria. And you're my husband. This is our life, our future. The money from selling that house could make a real difference for us. For Sophia's college fund." I sat perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe, feeling like an intruder in my own family's conversation. Thomas had been gone less than a week. We hadn't even had the reading of the will yet, and already they were dividing up our lives, making decisions about my future without consulting me. The betrayal stung like salt in an open wound. "We'll talk about this later," Michael said firmly. "Today is about respecting my father." "Fine, but don't put this off too long. The real estate market is hot right now." They left, the door closing softly behind them. I remained frozen in place, their cruel words echoing in my head. The old woman. The house. The nursing home. When I finally managed to stand, my legs trembled beneath me. I caught sight of myself in a mirror on the wall, pale, aged, diminished by grief. Was this how they saw me? A burden to be managed, an obstacle to their inheritance? My stomach churned with a mixture of hurt and indignation. As I stumbled back to the reception, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Thomas had said something to me just days before he passed. We'd been discussing finances, and he'd squeezed my hand, his eyes serious despite his weakness. "Olivia, I've taken care of everything," he'd said. "Don't worry about the future. I've made sure you'll be protected." At the time, I'd thought he was just trying to comfort me. Now I wondered if he had somehow foreseen what was coming. A small flame of hope flickered inside me, pushing back against the darkness of grief and betrayal. The house felt different when I returned from the funeral, like a body without a soul. Emptier, colder. Thomas and I had lived in this comfortable two-story colonial for nearly 30 years. We'd raised Michael here, celebrated holidays, weathered storms both literal and metaphorical. Now its familiar walls seemed to echo with absence, each room a reminder of what I'd lost. I wandered from room to room that evening, touching Thomas's belongings, running my fingers over the reading glasses he'd left on his nightstand, caressing the cardigan still hanging on the hook by the door, staring at the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table. Small pieces of a life suddenly interrupted. I couldn't bring myself to move any of them, feeling that to do so would somehow erase another small part of him. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Victoria's words kept replaying in my mind like a cruel taunt. "Manderò la vecchia in una casa di riposo." Send the old woman to a nursing home. I'd spent my entire adult life in education, rising from teacher to principal, nurturing and guiding thousands of children. I'd raised my own son with all the love and wisdom I could muster. Was this all it had amounted to? Being discarded when I was no longer deemed useful? The thought made my chest tighten with anger. The following morning brought a cheerful knock at my door. Victoria stood on my porch, a bright smile plastered on her face, holding a bag from an upscale meal delivery service. "Olivia, I brought you some dinner options from Fresh Gourmet. I know how hard it can be to cook for just one person." I forced a smile and invited her in, wondering if she had any idea I'd overheard her plans. Had she always been this transparently calculating, or was I only seeing it now? "Thank you, Victoria." "That's very thoughtful," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She swept into my kitchen, setting down the bag and immediately opening cabinets as if she owned the place. "My kitchen, my personal space. Let me help you organize a bit. This kitchen is just so..." She paused, searching for a diplomatic word. "Cluttered." I watched as she began rearranging my spice rack without permission. My spice rack, which Thomas had built for me as an anniversary gift 15 years ago, with each shelf carefully measured to fit the space beside our stove. I felt a surge of protective anger. "I've managed just fine with my kitchen for 30 years, I said, my voice sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret it. Victoria turned, surprise flickering across her perfectly made-up face before her sympathetic mask slid back into place. "Of course you have. I just thought I'd help make things easier now." She trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the empty chair where Thomas used to sit. "Now that I'm alone and apparently incapable?" The words rushed out before I could stop them, fueled by the hurt still fresh from yesterday. Her eyes widened slightly. "Olivia, no one thinks you're incapable. We're just concerned about you managing this big house all by yourself. It's not that big. 2 bedrooms and a study. The water heater that's always giving trouble, and the yard work." I sipped my tea, saying nothing, letting the warmth of the liquid calm me. Thomas and I had discussed downsizing years ago and decided against it. We loved our home, our neighborhood, the garden we'd cultivated together. The water heater worked perfectly fine with regular maintenance, and I had a service for the heavier yard work. "Michael and I have been talking," Victoria continued, her voice gentle but firm. "We think it might be time to consider some options that would be more manageable for you." "Options?" I asked, though I already knew what she meant. "Senior living communities. There's a lovely one just 20 minutes from our house. Private apartments but with staff available. Meals provided. Activities." She was already pulling up virtual tours on her tablet. Had she brought these to the funeral too? "I'm not ready to leave my home, Victoria." I kept my voice steady, though my hands wanted to tremble with indignation. "No one's saying right this minute," she backpedaled. "But it's good to start thinking about it. Planning ahead. Planning ahead." The funeral was barely over, and she was already planning my removal. "I found something interesting yesterday," I said, changing the subject. Going through Thomas's calendar. He had several appointments with Mr. Richardson in the weeks before he passed. Mr. Richardson was our lawyer. Had been for decades. Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment. Oh, I wonder what they were discussing. Probably just updating his will. Standard procedure when someone is... She waved her hand vaguely, unwilling to say dying. Probably, I agreed mildly. When is the reading scheduled? Michael's been handling that. I think it's next week. She stood abruptly. I should get going. I have a charity board meeting at noon. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the brochures she'd left behind. Smiling seniors playing golf, eating in elegant dining rooms, attending art classes. None of it looked terrible exactly, but it wasn't my home. I thought again of Thomas's words. I've taken care of everything. Had he suspected what might happen after he was gone? Had he known his son and daughter-in-law better than I did? The thought brought both comfort and sadness. That afternoon, I called Thomas's doctor, Dr. Martinez, who had been both his physician and our friend for many years. Olivia, how are you holding up? His voice was warm with genuine concern that made my eyes sting with fresh tears. Managing, I said. Actually, I'm calling about something specific. Those last few weeks, did Thomas ever talk to you about? About me? About his concerns for what would happen after? There was a pause. He did. Yes. What did he say? I asked, my heart beating faster. He asked me to keep an eye on you, Dr. Martinez said carefully, and to be available if you needed a medical opinion about anything. A medical opinion. About what? Another pause. About your capacity to live independently. He was concerned that there might be pressure for you to leave your home before it was medically necessary. My throat tightened with emotion. I see. Olivia, are you experiencing such pressure? It's been suggested that I might be better off in a senior living community already. His tone sharpened. That seems premature. You're in excellent health for a woman of 68. Your last physical showed no cognitive concerns. Your mobility is good. There's no medical reason you can't continue living independently. Relief washed over me. Would you be willing to put that in writing? Absolutely. Thomas asked me to prepare such a letter, actually. I have it ready. He thought. He thought you might need it. My Thomas, even in his final days. He'd been thinking ahead, anticipating the challenges I might face. Tears pricked at my eyes, but for the first time since his death, they weren't entirely sorrowful. There was gratitude there too, and something else. Resolve! I wasn't going to be pushed aside so easily. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the strength that had served me well through decades as an educator returning. The next morning I noticed Victoria's luxury SUV pulling into my driveway again. This time she wasn't alone. Michael was with her, and they both wore expressions of determined cheerfulness that immediately put me on guard. The battle for my home, my independence, my dignity had begun. I didn't sleep well that night, my mind racing with worries about what Victoria and Michael might be planning. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to be proactive rather than reactive. Thomas had always told me that preparation was half the battle, a philosophy that had served me well throughout my career in education. When Michael and Victoria arrived at my door, I welcomed them with coffee already brewed and a calm smile that masked my inner turmoil. The scent of freshly ground beans filled the kitchen, a small armor of normalcy. Mom, we wanted to talk to you about some practical matters, Michael began, settling onto the sofa where his father used to sit. The sight of him there, so different from Thomas yet occupying his space, made my heart constrict painfully. Of course, I said, passing him a cup of coffee. My hand steady despite my anxiety. I've been thinking about practical matters too. Victoria perched on the edge of her chair, her posture perfect as always. Not a hair out of place. We've been researching some wonderful living communities, she said, pulling out her tablet to show me virtual tours. This one has a waiting list, so it's good to get on it early. I nodded, pretending to consider the slick digital presentations. Before we talk about that, I'd like to ask Elena to join us. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Elena, the nurse who helped with Dad? Yes, she's stopping by this morning. I glanced at my watch. She should be here any minute. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Eleanor Rodriguez had been Thomas's home health nurse during his last months. In her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, she'd become something of a friend and ally. Sorry I'm late, she said, stepping into the living room. Traffic was terrible. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. Olivia, we were hoping to have a family discussion. Elena was practically family these last few months, I replied firmly. And she has professional experience that might be helpful. Elena sat beside me, her presence bolstering my courage. She'd witnessed Victoria's thinly veiled impatience during Thomas's illness, her reluctance to help with his care when it interfered with her social calendar. Michael, Victoria, I began, feeling stronger with Eleanor beside me. I appreciate your concern about my living situation, but I've given it a lot of thought, and I've decided to stay in my home. Victoria's smile tightened. Olivia, we understand that emotionally this house means a lot to you, but practically speaking, I interrupted gently but firmly, I'm perfectly capable of living independently. I've spoken with Dr. Martinez, who agrees there's no medical reason I should leave my home. Michael frowned. You spoke with Dad's doctor about this. Thomas asked him to assess my capacity before he passed. I explained, feeling a surge of gratitude toward my husband. He's provided a written statement. I pulled out the letter Dr. Martinez had delivered yesterday, passing it to Michael. His eyes widened as he read it. This says you're in excellent health for your age, he said, sounding surprised. Had he already convinced himself I was frail? I also spoke with Mrs. Winters from the hospital's social services department, Elena added. She can set up an assessment to determine what supports Olivia might need to stay home safely. Victoria shifted uncomfortably. That seems premature. We're just exploring options. Actually, I said, feeling a surge of confidence. It seems like you've already decided I should move to an assisted living facility. Send the old woman to a nursing home, were your exact words, I believe. The room went silent. Victoria paled, then flushed. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you at the funeral, Victoria, I said quietly. In the side room. I was there, sitting in the corner. Michael's face fell. Mom, I don't blame you for thinking about the future, I continued. But I'm not ready to leave my home, and there's no legitimate reason I should. Elena has helped me develop a plan to age in place safely. Elena nodded. Simple modifications like grab bars in the bathroom, a medical alert system, and regular check-ins can address most safety concerns. I'd be happy to review the plan with you both. Victoria stood abruptly. This feels like an ambush. It's not meant to be, I assured her, keeping my voice level. I'm just being practical, as you suggested. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Sophia, my 17-year-old granddaughter, letting herself in with the key she'd always had. Hi, Grandma, she called, then stopped short, seeing everyone gathered. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting? Not at all, sweetheart, I said, feeling a rush of affection. We're just having a family discussion. Sophia, tall and thoughtful like her grandfather, glanced around the tense room with perceptive eyes. Is everything okay? We're discussing Grandma's living situation, Michael explained. Sophia frowned. What about it? Your parents think I might be better off in a senior living community, I explained gently. What? Why? Grandma's fine on her own. She literally helped me create that environmental science project last weekend that won first place. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. Sophia, adult decisions are more complicated than that. I'm not a child, Mom, Sophia replied, her voice sharp with indignation. And Grandma's not incapable just because she's 68. I felt a surge of love for my granddaughter, so fiercely protective and clear-sighted. She'd been coming over more frequently since Thomas passed, sometimes working on her environmental activism projects at the kitchen table, sometimes just sitting with me in comfortable silence. Sophia, why don't you help me bring in some cookies from the kitchen? Elena suggested, giving the family a moment. When they left, Michael sighed heavily. Mom, I just want what's best for you. I know you do, I said, reaching for his hand. But what's best for me right now is staying in my home with appropriate supports. Thomas and I discussed this before he passed. This was our decision. Michael looked torn, glancing between me and Victoria. The reading of the will is tomorrow, I reminded him. Let's wait and see what Thomas wanted before making any major decisions about the house or my living situation. Victoria stood, smoothing her designer skirt. We should go. I have a hair appointment. After they left, Eleanor stayed for another cup of coffee. That went about as well as could be expected, she observed. Thank you for coming, I said, feeling exhausted but relieved. It helped having you here. Sophia returned from seeing her parents out. Grandma, are they really trying to make you move out? I sighed. They're concerned in their way. They're being ridiculous, Sophia declared. Don't worry, I won't let them push you around. Looking at her determined young face, I felt a flicker of hope warm my chest. I wasn't entirely alone in this battle. The offices of Richardson and Associates looked exactly as they had 5 years ago when Thomas and I had last updated our wills. The same leather chairs, the same landscape paintings, even the same receptionist with her kind smile and greying hair. "Mrs. Harrington, it's good to see you again," she said, rising to greet me. "Though I wish it were under different circumstances." "Thank you, Martha," I replied, clutching my handbag a little tighter than necessary, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. "Is everyone here already?" "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington just arrived. Mr. Richardson will be with you shortly." I nodded and settled into one of the waiting room chairs. My heart pounding unnaturally fast. I had barely slept last night, wondering what Thomas had arranged in his final meetings with the lawyer. Michael and Victoria sat across from me, Michael flipping through a magazine without really seeing it, Victoria checking her expensive watch every few minutes. "How long is this going to take?" she whispered to Michael. "I have that charity board meeting at 2. Michael shushed her, glancing apologetically in my direction. Mr. Richardson appeared in the doorway, dignified in his grey suit, his silver hair neatly combed. "Mrs. Harrington, Michael, Victoria, please come in." We followed him into his office, taking seats around a polished conference table. Mr. Richardson settled at the head, a thick folder open before him. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to express my condolences, Olivia. Thomas was a good man, a brilliant educator, and a dear friend." "Thank you," I murmured, feeling a fresh wave of grief. "Now to business." He adjusted his glasses. "Thomas's will is fairly straightforward. Olivia as his surviving spouse. You inherit the house outright and all its contents. The joint bank accounts, of course, were already in both your names. There's the life insurance policy, which names you as beneficiary." Victoria shifted in her seat, her impatience barely concealed. "And the investment accounts?" Mr. Richardson glanced at her, his expression neutral. "I'm getting to that, Mrs. Harrington. Thomas had a retirement account worth approximately $450,000. Upon his death, Olivia is the primary beneficiary." Michael nodded, looking unsurprised. "There is, however, a codicil that Thomas added 3 months ago," Mr. Richardson continued, turning a page in the document. "It concerns the house specifically." I felt a flutter of anticipation mingled with anxiety. This must be what Thomas had been planning. "The house at 1142 Maple Street is bequeathed to Olivia Harrington with lifetime right of residence. Upon her death, or should she voluntarily choose to sell the property, it will pass to Michael Harrington." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her interest visibly piqued. "However," Mr. Richardson emphasized the word, "there is a condition. If Olivia is forced or pressured to leave her home against her wishes, or without the documented recommendation of at least 2 independent medical professionals that she requires care she cannot receive at home, the house will not pass to Michael Harrington. Instead, it will be sold, and the proceeds will be donated to establish the Thomas Harrington Educational Scholarship, foundation in memory of Thomas's contributions to education." The room went silent. I stared at Mr. Richardson, hardly daring to believe what I'd just heard. Thomas had created a legal safeguard to protect me from exactly what Victoria had been planning. A mixture of love for my husband and vindication washed over me. Michael's face registered shock, then confusion. "I don't understand. Why would Dad think Mom would be forced to leave her home?" Mr. Richardson's expression remained carefully neutral. "I cannot speak to his motivations, only to the legal provisions he established." Victoria's face had drained of colour. She gripped the armrests of her chair, knuckles white with tension. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice tight. "No one is forcing Olivia to do anything. I'm simply conveying the terms of the will," Mr. Richardson replied calmly. "There are additional provisions. Thomas established a trust to pay for home maintenance, property taxes, and in-home care services should Olivia require them in the future. He also set aside funds for Sophia's education, contingent upon her maintaining her relationship with her grandmother. He thought of everything." "He did," I whispered, a wave of gratitude warming my chest. "There's more," Mr. Richardson continued. "Thomas left a personal letter for each of you. He handed me an envelope with my name written in Thomas's familiar handwriting, then passed one to Michael. "There's nothing for me?" Victoria asked, unable to hide her indignation. "I'm afraid not, Mrs. Harrington." Michael stared at his envelope, making no move to open it. I slipped mine into my purse, wanting to read Thomas's words in private. "Are there any questions about the will itself?" Mr. Richardson asked. Michael cleared his throat. "Can the condition about the house be contested?" Victoria shot him a warning look. Mr. Richardson folded his hands. "You can contest any will, Michael. but I must tell you that Thomas was of sound mind when he made these amendments. He underwent a cognitive assessment specifically to prevent any such challenge. Additionally, we videotaped the signing session, which is standard practice in our firm when significant changes are made. I see, Michael said quietly. If there are no further questions, I'll have Martha provide you with copies of all the documents. Outside the lawyer's office, Victoria didn't even try to hide her anger. This is absurd, she hissed to Michael. Your father specifically targeted me with that clause. Victoria, not now, Michael muttered, glancing at me. I need to get home, I said, not wanting to prolong this uncomfortable moment. Sophia is coming over after school to help me sort through some of Thomas's clothes for donation. I'll drive you, Michael offered. That's all right, I drove myself. I'd been driving for 50 years without incident, though Victoria had recently begun suggesting it might be time to reconsider my driving privileges. Mom, we need to talk about this, Michael said, his expression troubled. Yes, we do, I agreed, but not today. Today I need to process what we've learned. As I drove home, my hands steady on the wheel despite my emotional turmoil, I thought about the envelope in my purse. What final words had Thomas left for me? At home, I made a cup of tea and sat in my bedroom, carefully opening the envelope. My darling Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're facing the challenges I feared. I've seen how Victoria looks at our house, how she talks about next steps when she thinks I'm not listening. I know our son. He's a good man, but easily influenced by her ambitions. I'm sorry I won't be there to stand beside you, but I've done what I can to protect you. The house is yours for as long as you want it. The money is there to maintain it and care for you. Don't let them rush you into decisions that aren't right for you. Remember what we always told each other? We may bend, but we don't break. You're stronger than you know, Olivia. I've seen that strength every day for 43 years, in the classroom, as a principal, and as my partner. All my love now and always. Thomas' tears flowed freely down my cheeks as I held the letter to my heart. Even from beyond, Thomas was protecting me, fighting for me. I felt a surge of determination rise within me, the same resolve that had helped me navigate challenging situations throughout my career in education. When the doorbell rang an hour later, I had composed myself. It was Sophia, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her expression unusually serious. Grandma, we need to talk, she said, stepping inside. Mom and Dad are fighting about the will. Dad let something slip about a nursing home. What's really going on? I ushered Sophia into the kitchen, my mind racing. How much should I tell my 17-year-old granddaughter about the tension between her parents and me? She was perceptive, too perceptive sometimes, but she was still young. Would you like some lemonade? I asked, buying myself time. Grandma, Sophia said, dropping her backpack on a chair. Please don't treat me like a kid. Something's wrong, and I want to know what. I sighed, pouring us both glasses of lemonade. Your mother thinks I should move to an assisted living facility. Sophia's eyes widened with indignation. But why? You're perfectly fine here. She believes the house is too much for me to manage alone. That's ridiculous, Sophia scoffed. This house isn't even that big. I smiled sadly. I think there are other considerations involved. Like what? I hesitated, not wanting to speak ill of Victoria to her daughter. Financial ones, perhaps. Sophia's face darkened with understanding. The house. They want to sell it, don't they? I nodded slightly. Your grandfather anticipated this might happen. He put a clause in his will to prevent me from being forced out. Good for Grandpa, Sophia said fiercely. Then her expression shifted to worry. But Mom won't give up easily. I've seen how she gets when she wants something. That was an understatement. Victoria had always been determined, calculating. It was partly what had made her successful in her career as a luxury real estate consultant. She saw opportunities where others didn't, and she pursued them relentlessly. I can handle your mother, I assured Sophia with more confidence than I felt. Sophia took a long sip of lemonade, her brow furrowed in thought. You know, she said finally, I could move in with you. I nearly choked on my drink. What? Just hear me out. I'm going to state next year. It's only 20 minutes away. I could live here instead of the dorms. I'd help with the house and Mom couldn't argue that you're all alone. I was touched by her offer but shook my head. Sophia, that's very sweet. But your first year of college should be about making friends. Having the full experience. I'd still have all that, she insisted. But I'd have free housing and you'd have company. It's practical. Practical. Victoria's favorite word. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Victoria's voice called out, and Sophia, are you here? Sophia rolled her eyes. In the kitchen, Mom. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her professional smile firmly in place, despite the tension I could see in her shoulders. There you are. I thought you were helping Grandma sort through Grandpa's clothes. We were just about to start, Sophia said, her tone suddenly defensive. Victoria glanced between us, clearly suspicious. What were you two discussing so intently? College plans, I said smoothly. Sophia was telling me about the environmental science program at State. Victoria nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. Sophia, can you give Grandma and me a few minutes? There's something we need to discuss. Sophia crossed her arms. If it's about Grandma, I think I should stay. Sophia, Victoria said, her voice sharpening. This is an adult conversation. I'm not a child, Mom. I placed a hand on Sophia's arm. It's all right, sweetheart. Why don't you start looking through the closet upstairs? I'll join you in a bit. Sophia hesitated, then grudgingly picked up her backpack. Fine, but I'm not going far. She gave her mother a pointed look before heading upstairs. When we were alone, Victoria sat across from me, her smile fading. Olivia, we need to talk about what happened at the lawyer's office. I thought we agreed to discuss it another day. This can't wait, Victoria insisted. That clause, Thomas added. It's manipulative and unfair. I raised an eyebrow. Unfair? How so? It's clearly designed to prevent us from helping you make necessary decisions about your future. Or designed to prevent you from making those decisions for me, I countered firmly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You think I'm the villain here, don't you? That I'm just after the house. I think you have strong opinions about what should happen to me and this property, I said carefully. Opinions you expressed quite clearly at the funeral. Her cheeks flushed. I was emotional that day. We all were. Yes, grief often reveals our true thoughts. Victoria leaned forward, her voice dropping. Olivia, be reasonable. This house is worth at least $450,000 in today's market. That money could do so much for Michael and Sophia's future. Instead, it's just sitting here underutilized. This is my home, Victoria. Not an investment property, I responded, my voice hard with conviction. And it could be someone else's home, a young family who needs the space. Meanwhile, you could be in a beautiful apartment with people your own age, activities, dining options. All the things you think a woman of 68 should want, I said quietly, anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. She sighed in exasperation. I'm trying to be practical. So am I. That's why I've asked a home modifications specialist to assess what changes might make aging in place safer for me. Victoria's eyes widened. You what? Elena referred me to someone. They're coming next week. Grab bars in the bathroom, better lighting. Perhaps a first-floor laundry conversion. Small changes that can make a big difference. That's throwing good money after bad, Victoria protested. You're spending money to stay in a house you'll eventually have to leave anyway. According to whom? I asked. Dr. Martinez says I'm perfectly capable of living independently. For now, Victoria said dismissively. But what about in 5 years, 10? If and when I need additional help, Thomas's trust will cover in-home care. Victoria stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. You're being stubborn and selfish. Michael is trying to do what's best for everyone, including you. And you're making it impossible. Is it selfish to want to stay in my own home? I asked, my voice rising with emotion. To honor Thomas's wishes for me? Thomas isn't here anymore, Victoria snapped. The rest of us need to move forward. I felt a flash of anger, sharper than any emotion I'd allowed myself to show since this began. It's been 2 weeks, Victoria. 2 weeks since I buried my husband of 43 years. And you're already talking about moving forward with selling the home we built together. She had the grace to look momentarily abashed. I didn't mean yes, you did, I said, rising to my feet, drawing on the authority I'd once wielded as a principal. You've made your priorities very clear. Now let me make mine clear. I am staying in this house. I am mentally and physically capable of doing so. And any attempts to suggest otherwise will only damage your relationship with me and potentially with Sophia, who isn't nearly as oblivious as you seem to think. Victoria stared at me, clearly not used to such direct confrontation from her mother-in-law. For a moment, I glimpsed uncertainty in her eyes. Then the front door opened again, and Michael called out, "Hello, Mom, Victoria?" Victoria stepped back, composing herself just as Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway. One look at our faces told him he'd walked into the middle of something tense. "What's going on?" he asked wearily. "Your mother and I were just discussing some options," Victoria said, her professional mask sliding back into place. "What options?" Michael asked, looking between us. Before either of us could answer, Sophia appeared on the stairs. They're arguing about whether Grandma should be forced into a nursing home so you guys can sell her house. The kitchen fell silent. Michael stood frozen in the doorway, his gaze shifting from Victoria to me. Then up to Sophia on the stairs. That's not, Victoria began. But Sophia cut her off. Don't lie, Mom. I heard you on the phone with that real estate agent yesterday. You said the house could go on the market by summer if you played your cards right. I recorded it on my phone. Michael's face paled. Victoria, is that true? Victoria straightened her shoulders. I was exploring options. That's what responsible adults do. Behind my back, when we agreed to wait, I had never seen my son look at his wife with such disappointment. In that moment, I realized how much Victoria's ambition had shaped their marriage. Perhaps without Michael fully recognizing it. I think, I said carefully. We all need to sit down and have an honest conversation. No more schemes, no more whispers. Just truth. Michael nodded slowly. You're right, Mom. He pulled out a kitchen chair and sank into it, suddenly looking exhausted. Sophia, come down here, please. Sophia descended the stairs, her expression a mix of defiance and anxiety. She took the seat beside me, a silent declaration of allegiance that warmed my heart. Victoria remained standing a moment longer, as if maintaining the higher ground before finally taking the last chair. I know you think I'm the villain here, Victoria began, looking directly at me. But I'm just being practical about a situation none of us asked for. Mom, Sophia interjected. Sophia, Michael warned. No, let her speak, I said. Everyone deserves a voice in this conversation. Sophia straightened. Grandma is perfectly capable of living here. She's not sick. She's not confused. She doesn't need to be in a home. You just want the money from selling the house. Victoria's face flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? Sophia challenged. We see how you are with money, Mom. Always talking about upgrading, investing, moving up. But this isn't just a house. It's Grandma's home, where she and Grandpa built their life together. Michael ran a hand through his hair, looking more like his father than I'd ever noticed before. Victoria, we talked about this. We agreed not to pressure Mom. And when exactly was I supposed to bring it up? Victoria demanded. When she's 80, 90? After she falls down those stairs and breaks a hip? Stop it, I said firmly. The voice that had once commanded a school of 500 students. I'm sitting right here. Don't talk about me like I'm not in the room or incapable of understanding. Victoria had the grace to look embarrassed. I'm sorry, Olivia, but my concerns are valid. They are, I conceded, which is why I'm taking steps to make this house safer as I age. The modifications Elena recommended are sensible. I'm getting a medical alert system. And yes, someday I may need more assistance, but that day is not today. And when it comes, there are options beyond selling this house and moving me to a facility. Michael looked at me with new respect. You've really thought this through? Of course I have. Thomas and I discussed it extensively when he got sick. I folded my hands on the table. Now, I understand that you're disappointed about the house, Victoria. You saw it as an asset, an inheritance. But it's my home. And Thomas wanted me to stay here as long as I wished. He made that legally clear. Victoria's expression tightened. That clause was manipulative. It was protective, I corrected, and necessary, apparently. The tension between us stretched, hot and uncomfortable. Then, surprisingly, it was Michael who broke it. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly. Dad was right. I didn't see what was happening. Victoria turned to him, betrayal flashing in her eyes. Michael, no, Victoria, this isn't right. How would you feel if someone decided your home, your life choices weren't valid anymore, if they discussed sending you away as if you weren't capable of having a say? My mother spent her life making decisions for an entire school, for God's sake. That's different, Victoria protested. I'm not 70, I reminded her. And 68 isn't 90. I could live here independently for another decade or more. Sophia, who had been watching the exchange intently, spoke up. And I've been thinking. My offer to live here during college is serious. It would be good for both of us. Michael looked surprised. You want to live with Grandma instead of the dorms? Why not? Sophia shrugged. State is close, the commute is easy, and I'd save thousands in housing costs. Plus, I'd be here at night if Grandma needed anything. I hadn't expected Sophia to bring up her offer in front of her parents, but I was touched by her determination to help. Victoria looked between her daughter and me, clearly calculating this new development. That could actually work, she admitted reluctantly. At least for a few years. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. If Sophia lived with me, Victoria couldn't push the nursing home narrative. And if she waited until Sophia graduated, perhaps the housing market would be even better. I'm not asking for your permission, Mom, Sophia said firmly. I'm telling you my plans. Michael smiled slightly at his daughter's boldness. It's not a bad idea, and Mom wouldn't be alone in the house. Victoria nodded slowly, recognizing defeat for now. Fine, if that's what everyone wants. What I want, I said, looking at each of them in turn, is for this family to heal. Thomas would hate seeing us torn apart like this. Michael reached across the table for my hand. He would, and I'm sorry we've added to your grief, Mom. Victoria didn't apologize. I hadn't expected her to, but something in her posture eased slightly. We should go, she said, standing. Sophia has homework and Olivia probably needs to rest. Actually, I said, I was hoping Sophia could still help me with Thomas's clothes. It's time to start letting go of some things. Victoria hesitated, then nodded. All right, Michael and I will come back for her later. After they left, Sophia and I spent the afternoon sorting through Thomas's wardrobe. Each shirt, each pair of shoes held memories. I cried sometimes, but it felt cleansing rather than devastating. You know she hasn't given up, Sophia said as we folded a sweater I'd decided to keep. Mom, she's just regrouping. I know, I said, squeezing her hand, but I'm prepared now. And I have allies. The months that followed brought changes, but not the ones Victoria had planned. The home modifications were completed, making the house safer without changing its character. I had a smart home system installed that Sophia helped me learn to use, proving that technology could be an ally in aging independently. Sophia graduated high school with honors and moved into the second bedroom that fall. Bringing youthful energy to the quiet house, Michael came by more often, sometimes without Victoria, reconnecting with me in a way we hadn't managed since he was young. Our conversations grew deeper, more honest. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing Thomas had hung decades ago, he confessed that his marriage was struggling. Dad's letter made me think about a lot of things, he said. About the kind of man I want to be, the kind of example I want to set for Sophia. I squeezed his hand, feeling the depth of his confusion and pain. Your father would be proud of you for reflecting so deeply. Victoria remained Victoria, practical, ambitious, focused on appearance and advancement. But something had shifted in the power dynamic of their relationship. Michael stood up to her more, especially regarding me. And when she brought up the house again, as I knew she would, he shut the conversation down firmly. Mom stays where she wants to stay, he told her. End of discussion. As for me, I discovered that 68 was not the end, but another beginning. I joined a water aerobics class at the community centre, reconnected with old friends, and even started a small online support group for widows navigating their new independence. The grief of losing Thomas never fully disappeared, but it softened, making space for new experiences and insights. On the anniversary of Thomas's death, I visited his grave alone, placing fresh flowers against the headstone. You were right, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I didn't break. I bent, but I didn't break. Walking back to my car, still driving despite Victoria's concerns, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Thomas had given me one final gift, the space and time to discover my own strength, to remember who I was beyond being someone's wife, someone's mother. I was Olivia Harrington, 69 years old, former elementary school principal, still living in my own home, still making my own choices, still finding joy in each day. That night, Sophia and I had dinner on the patio, watching fireflies blink in the gathering twilight. Her first year of college had been full of new friends and challenges, but she seemed content with our arrangement. Do you ever regret turning down the dorms? I asked, genuinely curious. She shook her head. Never. This was right for both of us. She smiled mischievously. Plus, it drives Mom crazy, which is a bonus. I laughed, a full, rich sound that filled the evening air. Thomas would have loved hearing it. The battle wasn't over, of course. Victoria would try again someday. But I was no longer afraid. I had found my voice, my strength, my dignity, and I wasn't letting go.